Hey guys, check out my new store on Etsy called Nina's Nightly Comforts, where you can find everything from men's t-shirts to women's cozy pajama dresses, men's and women's tank tops for those warm nights, throw pillows, a warm and toasty fleece blanket for those cool fall nights that are yet to come, a mug perfect for tea, coffee, or your favorite beverage, and last but not least, a limited supply of specially handcrafted by me dream catchers to capture all of your nightmares that my creepypastas will leave you with. Everything to get you comfortable and in the right mood to listen to your favorite creepypastas. You can find the link posted below in the description and also in my community tab. And if you haven't already, remember to subscribe to keep me in your nightmares. Good morning, Lindsey, my neighbor, Mrs. Saunders shouts from her front porch as she grips her mug tightly in her hands and takes a sip of her steaming hot coffee. Good morning, I reply, waving as I rush down the walkway to my car. But before I have a chance to climb into the driver's seat, she calls in the sweetest tone she can muster. Oh, honey, I sure hate to bother you. I can see that you're in a hurry, but would you be a dear and bring me my paper? A little agitated because I'm already running late, I quickly stroll over, bend down, and retrieve the newspaper from her lawn, then walk up the steps onto her porch and hand it to her. Oh, thank you, sweetheart. With a smile, I answer, You're welcome. Now I've really got to get going. Then I start walking back to my car when I suddenly realize that today is Friday. So I stop, turn back around, and tell Mrs. Saunders, I'm sorry, I was in such a rush that I almost forgot what day it was. I'm going to the supermarket after work tonight. Do you need me to pick up anything for you? I'm so glad you asked, she says, pulling a grocery list from the pocket of her robe. I walk back over, take it from her, then unfold it and glance inside to make sure some money is tucked in there, and just like always, there's a $50 bill. So then I refold it and slide it into my purse. Okay, I'll see you later. Russell and I will bring your groceries over once I get home tonight. Thanks again, she calls after me as I finally manage to climb into my car. As I start it up and pull away, I think about how much I love it here. Sun Valley is a small city in Ketchum, Idaho, and not only was I born here, I've lived here my entire life. I even met my husband at the College of Southern Idaho out in Haley, and my two kids, Jason and Jennifer, were both born and raised here as well. My 19-year-old daughter, Jennifer, has moved away now. She goes to college way out in Connecticut, but my 14-year-old son, Jason, who is a freshman in high school, still lives at home. Sun Valley is a place like you see in the movies, where everybody knows everybody, and you don't hesitate to lend a helping hand to one another, especially your neighbors. Which is why I pick up Mrs. Saunders' groceries every Friday after work. My husband cuts her grass in the summer, and as much as he hates it, my son shovels her sidewalk in the wintertime and rakes her leaves in the fall. Knowing how much he despises doing it, she always offers him a couple of bucks, which he ends up spending on video games, so I don't see why he even complains. Right at that moment, I just so happen to glance at the dashboard and see that I'm on E. Realizing that I completely forgot to stop for gas the day before on my way home from work, like I had planned, I pull into the gas station up the road and park at one of the pumps. Then I grab my wallet from my purse and head inside. After waiting in line for a few minutes behind a customer purchasing a ton of lottery tickets, I walk away and grab a bottle of water and a pack of gum, then head back to the register. Thankfully, they are gone now, so I pay for my gas and other items, then start walking back outside to the pump. On my way back to my car, I notice a group of people, I count 5 in all, standing at the edge of the woods that surround the gas station. I can't tell for sure from where I am, but it seems like they are all looking at something. And me being the curious person that I am, well, my husband calls it being nosy, I start heading over there to see what's going on. As I get closer, I recognize 2 of the people standing over there, Bridget Benson, who is another one of my neighbors, and her daughter Marlo. Hey, what's going on? I ask as I walk up behind them. But before either of them can answer, I freeze right in my tracks when I see what it is that everyone's so fascinated with. There is a massive spider web strung from one tree to another. It's gotta be at least a couple of feet long. Holy shit, that thing is huge. I don't think I've ever seen one that big before, I say amazed, yet still disgusted at the same time. I know, right? Bridget says, agreeing. I dash over to my car to get my cell phone. Then from a distance, I snap a few pics so that I can show them to my son later. He loves anything creepy, gross, and that makes your skin crawl. And in my opinion, this definitely counts as all three of those. I wonder how big this spider that made this must be, Marlo says as she continues to stare at it in wonder and astonishment. As a chill runs down my spine, I reply, I don't even want to think about it. Ever since I was a kid, I've been deathly afraid of spiders. I blame my arachnophobia on my older brother, who used to try and scare me all of the time with his fake tarantulas. He would leave them lying all around the house, hiding them in places that he knew I'd be sure to find them, like in the shower or mixed into cereal boxes and under the blankets on my bed. There's just something about them. I don't know if it's their hairy bodies, 8 legs, the way you can't tell where they're looking with their numerous eyes, or the way that they scurry around so fast. And last but not least, the thing that I think I hate about them the most is just knowing that they have tiny little fangs that they can bite you with. And let's not even mention the fact that some of those little terrors can even kill you. I've even heard that there are ones that make your skin decay. I mean, all of those are valid reasons to be terrified of them in my book, and that's why the sight and even just the thought of spiders makes my skin crawl. I snap a few more photos, then tell Bridget and Marlo goodbye and head back to my car to pump my gas, the whole time thinking how even though everyone else seemed to be, I'm not that surprised by the web. There are tons of different types of bugs and wild animals around here because there are a lot of woods throughout our town. However, the size of the web is quite alarming, especially for someone like me who's terrified of spiders. Just then, a smirk spreads across my lips as I think, thank God I didn't see any spiders over there in that web, or everyone would have gotten quite the show, seeing me running across the parking lot screaming, damn near in tears. After I finish filling up my tank, I head to work, making it there just in the nick of time. I've been late twice this week already, and a third time would definitely make my boss flip her lid. I clock in and hurry to my booth. I work as a teller at Sun Valley Bank. My coworker, Natalie, comes over, glances down at her watch, and then back up at me. I was starting to get a little worried. I thought you were going to be late again. Sharon's been keeping a close eye on the clock this morning. Blowing my breath, I reply, Of course she has. God, I despise that woman. I know she's just waiting for a reason to fire me. Since we have another 15 minutes before the bank opens up to customers, I pull out my phone to show Natalie the pictures that I took of the web. This is why I was almost late this morning. She leans over to take a look. Is that? Yeah, the biggest spider web known to man, I say, answering her question before she can even manage to get it out. It was at the gas station in town. Well, that's just disgusting. Tell me about it. You know how I feel about bugs, especially spiders. Well, what possessed you to take a picture of it then? My son Jason loves this type of stuff, so I snapped a few pics to show him later. What, are you hoping it'll make him think his mom is cool? Natalie questions jokingly. Yeah, right. I don't think there's anything I could possibly do to get him to think that, I answer with a chuckle. Just then, I see my boss walk out of her office, so I quickly put my phone away and get to work. The day passes by rather quickly, and at 6 p.m. I clock out and say goodbye to the couple of people still hanging around the office, then head to the supermarket. When I arrive, I pull Mrs. Saunders' grocery list from my purse, as well as mine, and then speed through the aisles, picking out the items from both our lists and tossing them into the cart. Once I've double-checked that I have everything, I head to the checkout. Of course, just like every Friday evening, the place is jam-packed, So that means every line that is open, which isn't many of them, is a mile long. I find the shortest one, park my cart, and grab a magazine from a rack to read while I wait. Just as I begin flipping through the pages, I overhear the woman standing behind me in line, talking to a man that's waiting in the next line over. "Did you hear about that giant spider web at the gas station in town?" "Of course I've heard. It's the talk of the town. I just wish I had the time to stop by and see it for myself, but I had deliveries all day today. Maybe I'll swing by there on my way home from here." "I wouldn't. Last I heard, the news people were over there. And once all of the kids around town heard that, they went rushing over there, looking for their 15 minutes of fame, trying to get interviewed." Butting into their conversation, I pull out my cell phone and say, "Excuse me, I don't mean to interrupt. I couldn't help but hear you two talking. I actually took some pictures of this web everyone is talking about. I saw it this morning on my way to work. Do you mind if I have a look?" the man who introduces himself as Dave asks. "No, here you go," I say, handing my phone to him. He slides his one free hand into his pocket and pulls out a pair of glasses, then puts them on. Well, I'll be damned. I had heard it was big, but this thing looks massive. Yeah, the pictures don't really do it much justice. You've definitely got to see it up close. Well, I must say, these pictures of yours have piqued my interest, he answers, handing back my phone. Finally, I make my way to the front of the line, pay for my groceries, then head home. When I pull into the driveway, it's nearly 8 p.m. I start bringing my groceries into the house, and after my first trip, my husband and son come out to help. Jason finishes carrying in our stuff while Russell and I take Mrs. Saunders her groceries. I ring the doorbell and expect to have to wait a minute for her to answer, like usual, but she opens the door right away. It almost seems like she was standing there waiting for us. Russell immediately takes a step forward, expecting her to move aside so that he can go in and sit the bags in the kitchen on the table like always. But instead, she remains standing there, blocking the doorway. As she continues to just stand there in silence, finally he asks, "Can I come in?" She shakes her head no. Feeling like something about her is a little off, I ask, "Mrs. Saunders, is everything all right?" "Yes, dear, everything's fine. I just had a long day and I'm tired. I was expecting you an hour ago." "I'm sorry, I had to work late, and the store was crowded, so it took a little longer than usual." "You can just sit my bags right here," she says, pointing to the floor right inside the door. "Are you sure? It's really no problem to put them in the kitchen," Russell assures her. "Leave them there," she says again. Russell and I glance at each other, obviously confused by the change in routine, but after a moment he shrugs his shoulders and places the two bags he's holding on the floor where she instructed him. "You have a good night, Mrs. Saunders," he tells her as he starts walking away. Just as I'm placing the two bags I'm carrying down on the floor, I notice that her hand looks really swollen. "Mrs. Saunders, are you all right? Did you hurt yourself?" I question, reaching out toward her. She recoils like I've offended her, and then slams the door right in my face. I hurry down off of her porch and take one last look back at her house as I make my way up my own walkway. My cat Arietti purrs loudly, greeting me as I walk through the door. Jason can obviously tell that I'm perplexed because he asks, "Mom, is something wrong?" I shake my head. "Mrs. Saunders was just acting really weird. I mean, it's probably nothing to worry about. She said she was tired. I'm sure that's all it is." "Mom, look at who we're talking about here. Mrs. Saunders is a weird lady to begin with." I smile at his comment, then head to the kitchen where Russell's heating up my dinner for me. He gently places a plate in front of me, just as I sit down at the table. "Thank you," I say, before he bends down for a quick kiss. As I sit there eating, he sits down across from me, telling me all about his day. Then I tell him about mine. Jason walks in just as I'm handing Russell my phone to show him the spiderweb that I saw this morning. Knowing how deathly terrified I am of spiders, he says, "Wow, that thing is pretty big. I'm shocked that you even went near it to take this picture." Oh, believe me, I didn't get that close. There were a bunch of other people there, and I stood far behind them and then just zoomed in, I say, laughing. Jason walks up behind his dad and looks over his shoulder at the pictures as he scrolls through them. Everyone was talking about this at school today. These pictures are great. Mom, you've got to text them to me so that I can post them on my Instagram. Even though I can't stop thinking about Mrs. Saunders and how strange she seemed to be acting earlier tonight, I don't bring it up to Russell until we're getting ready for bed. Did Mrs. Saunders seem off to you? I don't know if I'd say off. She seemed a little annoyed that you showed up with her groceries so late. She did say she was tired. She probably just got irritated waiting for you. Yeah, maybe. But her hand was swollen. It looked almost like she had an allergic reaction to something. And when I asked her about it, she slammed the door right in my face. That's just not like her. Look, if it'll make you feel any better, I'll go check on her first thing tomorrow morning. No, that's okay. I'm sure I'll see her on my way out the door anyway. The next morning, I get up for work, making sure that I'm early enough so that I'll have a little extra time to talk to Mrs. Saunders without being late. But when I walk out the door, she isn't outside on her porch like she usually is. I debate whether or not to go knock on her door, but then decide not to. I just text Russell and ask him to check on her later when he gets a chance. On my drive to work, I'm shocked to see more spiderwebs all throughout the trees in the woods. But these don't look quite like the same one that I saw yesterday at the gas station. These are a bit larger, and to look more like a spider took over the branches, covering them completely in webbing, causing all of the leaves inside of it to just die. A bit of concern comes over me as I start to think about an infestation, but I quickly push that thought to the back of my mind when I get a call from my husband. He tells me that he knocked on Mrs. Saunders' door, but got no answer. Maybe she was still asleep. We've lived next door to that woman for over 10 years. When has she ever slept in later than 7 a.m.? Just then, a horrifying thought crosses my mind. Oh my goodness, you don't think she's dead, do you? Well, she is in her 80s, isn't she? Russell, this isn't the time for jokes. I'm being serious. With a chuckle, he replies, I'm sure she's fine. I'll go back over there in a little while and check again. Thanks, I reply, before bringing up the webs. Hey, do you remember those pictures I showed you last night of that web that I saw at the gas station? Yeah, what about them? Well, I'm driving down Seymour Road right now, and there are more of them, even bigger than that one. They're all in the trees. Okay, so what? Do you think there could be an infestation? I doubt it. Probably just spiders spinning some webs because the weather's starting to change. They want to stay warm just like the rest of us. You say it like they're people too. Aw, come on. They aren't that bad. Speak for yourself. I'm pulling into work now, so I've got to go, but I'll call you later. Love you, I say, before hanging up. Days go by without any sight of or word from Mrs. Saunders. I get in touch with her son who lives in Florida, but unfortunately he tells me that he hasn't talked to her in a while, which isn't unusual for them because they only speak on the phone every couple of weeks. Finally, I alert the police and ask them to conduct a welfare check, but they find nothing. Mrs. Saunders isn't there, and nothing looks out of the ordinary. So her son reports her missing, but cops say that they don't suspect foul play in her disappearance. They think that she just up and left. But I know her. She would never do that. Not without at least telling someone. Plus, she's too old and fragile to really travel anywhere, which is why my husband and I, as well as some of our other neighbors, always run her errands for her. Over the next few weeks, Mrs. Saunders' mysterious disappearance is all that everyone's talking about. And of course, I'm worried sick about her too. But I have something else on my mind as well. The spiderwebs that keep appearing all over town. Each day, it seems like there are even more of them than the day before. I tried talking to Russell about it, but for some reason, he hasn't seemed to notice them, which I don't see how he hasn't. Then one day at work, I find out something that only amplifies my worry. I overhear one of the customers mention something about 2 campers that have gone missing. Before hearing this, I hadn't even known anything about it. Rather curious, I ask the female customer if she knows any more details when she approaches my booth. She proceeds to tell me, "It's all over the news. But all I know is that a man and woman were camping in the woods nearby a few days ago, and I guess they were supposed to return home yesterday, and they never did. Their families reported them missing, and now the police are searching the woods looking for them." Hearing this sends a shiver down my spine, and my mind instantly shifts to Mrs. Saunders. It's been weeks, and she still hasn't been found. That night when I get home, Jason and Russell aren't there. Jason had a baseball game tonight, and unfortunately, I had to miss it because of work. I glance at the clock, thinking to myself that they should be returning any minute now. I slip out of my heels and make my way to the kitchen to feed Arietti. After pouring some food into her bowl and filling up her water dish, I call for her when she doesn't automatically come running. "Here, kitty kitty." "Arietti, where are you, girl?" When she still doesn't come out, I start searching the house for her, checking the usual places that she hides in when she wants some alone time, but I can't find her anywhere. That's when Jason and Russell get home, and they help me look for her, but after searching for over an hour, we still can't find her. Russell seems to think that somehow she managed to sneak out the door without us noticing and ran away. I'm so upset, I just don't understand where she could be. I sit down at the dining room table, but I can only pick at my dinner. I have a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach, which is making me feel not very hungry. Another week goes by, but there's still no sign of my cat, Mrs. Saunders, or the missing campers. But one thing that I do keep seeing are more and more of those disgusting, big, thick spider webs. Now they're starting to pop up literally all over town. Everywhere I go, I see them. When I'm driving down the road, they're in the woods. At my job, when I drop Jason off at school, draped from tree to tree, hanging from the roofs, just everywhere you can even think of. And the strange thing is that with all of these webs popping up all over the place, you would think I'd see tons of spiders, but I haven't seen not a one. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that I haven't, but it just seems sort of weird to me. Obviously, they must be hiding, only coming out at night when no people are around to see them. Because everyone that I've talked to has said the same thing, that they haven't seen any spiders either, not a single one. Then, after Mrs. Saunders has been missing for over a month, her body's discovered in the woods about a mile from her house. Her corpse is sucked dry of all nutrients, wrapped in the same webbing that's all over town, like a caterpillar in a cocoon. The police seem to think that she ventured out for a walk early one morning and maybe got lost or fell and just ended up dying of starvation out there. They think that the bugs and wild animals feasted on her after she was already deceased. But what doesn't make sense to me is they already searched that area and her body wasn't there before. So how did it suddenly just show up there? I bring my concerns to Russell, but he just brushes them off. Apparently he doesn't seem to think anything's wrong with where they found her or the condition her body was in when they did. But I have a thought of what may have happened to her. When I tell Russell, he immediately shuts the idea down. That's ridiculous. Do you know how crazy that sounds? Spiders don't suck all of the blood from a dead body. You're letting your fear of them put these crazy thoughts in your head. You've got to stop it, Lindsey. When I see that this conversation is going absolutely nowhere, I just let it go. Then, one night, Jason asks if he can spend the night at a neighbor's house, a friend named Josiah. At first I agree, but then he gives me a few more details and says that they're going to be camping out in the backyard in his tent. No, Jason, no way. You know those 2 campers went missing not far from here. Come on, Mom, you already said that I could go. Well, I changed my mind, and now the answer is no. He glances over at his father for assistance. Dad, please, tell her she's being paranoid. But instead of getting the response he wanted, Russell replies, You heard your mother. Jason storms upstairs to his room, and I don't see him for the rest of the night. Then early the next morning, I'm awakened by the sound of police sirens. When I open my eyes, it's still dark outside. I glance over at my alarm, which hasn't even gone off yet. It's only a little after 6 a.m. I nudge Russell awake, and the two of us crawl out of bed to see what's going on. When I make my way downstairs and peek out the living room window, the street is full of police cars. What do you think happened? I ask my husband. I have no clue. Then he grabs his coat from the closet and puts it on over his robe. Where are you going? I'm gonna go see if I can find out what's going on, he says, before walking out the door. I continue to peek out the window, watching as he approaches one of the officers and starts talking to him. A few minutes later, he returns with a look on his face that can only mean one thing. Whatever it is bad news. What? What is it? I ask, not really sure if I want to know the answer. It's Josiah. Just then, Jason comes walking down the stairs, letting out a yawn. Josiah? What about Josiah? His father got up this morning and went out to the backyard to check on him before he left for work. But he was gone. What do you mean, gone? He's missing. The police are out there looking for him right now. They should be stopping by pretty soon to talk to us. They're going door to door, questioning all of the neighbors to find out if anyone saw or heard anything strange last night. We all go back upstairs and get dressed. Then I leave my boss a message letting her know that I won't be able to come into work today. Almost an hour later, the doorbell rings. Russell answers it, and there are two police officers standing on our doorstep with a pen and notepad in their hands. They introduce themselves, and Russell invites them in. Then they proceed to question us. We tell them how Jason was invited to camp out in the backyard with Josiah last night, but that we told him he couldn't go. They ask us a few more things, if we happened to see him, anyone, or anything strange last night, but none of us heard or saw anything out of the ordinary. Then they tell us that his parents are trying to get a group of people together to help hand out missing persons posters. Of course we volunteer to help, so once the police leave, we immediately head down the street to Josiah's house. His mother is distraught, and his father is just really worried. They hand us all a pile of posters, and we split up. Russell decides to drive into town to hang them up and pass them out at some of the businesses. Jason starts walking around the neighborhood, handing them out to the neighbors with a few of his friends, and I head to the backyard with his parents and some of our other neighbors to search for any clues that the police may have missed back there. When the small group that has formed get to the backyard, we split up. I immediately start searching in and around the tent with Josiah's mother, Megan. Inside the tent is just a pillow and blanket, Josiah's cell phone, iPad, and some cupcake and candy bar wrappers all strewn about, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then outside the tent, we don't really find anything either, but one thing that I do notice is that there are a whole lot of those creepy, disgusting spider webs all over the tree branches in their backyard. When did these show up back here? I ask Megan, as I point up at the trees. Shrugging her shoulders, probably wondering why I'm so worried about it, because it has no relevance whatsoever to her son going missing, she answers, I don't know, maybe a few days ago? Instantly I get the chills, just thinking about the fact that more and more of these things are still showing up everywhere. They're damn near taking over the entire town, and no one, except for me, seems to be worried about it. After an hour of searching and not finding any sign of Josiah, I head back home and spend the rest of my day spraying spider repellent all around the inside and outside of my house, despite the fact that I just did it a week ago. 3 days later, Josiah still hasn't been found. The mayor decides to hold a town meeting at the community center, so I drive there after work. When I arrive, the parking lot's already full of cars. I find an empty spot, park, and then head inside. After searching the crowd, I see Russell and head over in his direction. A few minutes later, everyone starts taking a seat and the meeting begins. A number of concerns and issues are addressed, including the fact that those two campers who went missing in the woods, Their remains were discovered this morning in the same exact condition that Mrs. Saunders' corpse was found, sucked completely dry and wrapped in webbing. Some townspeople are worried that there's a serial killer in our town, that they might even be among us, kidnapping and then killing unsuspecting residents and then discarding their bodies in the woods to be picked clean by wild animals. The mayor assures everyone that that notion is absurd, but he wants to set a curfew. Half of the residents are for it and the other half are against it. Hoping that it doesn't piss Russell off, because I know that he's already agitated with me over it, but feeling the urge to share what has been on my mind for a while now, I stand and say, I know this probably sounds crazy, but what if it's the spiders? Did anybody ever think of that? Everyone in the room, including my own husband, looks at me like I'm nuts. But not caring what they think of me, I continue. Don't you all realize that none of this was happening until those strange webs started appearing all over town? Then Mrs. Saunders mysteriously disappears, and then those 2 campers go missing while hiking in the woods. And I didn't say anything to anyone before because it didn't seem as important with everything else that's going on right now. But my cat went missing that same night, and I know she didn't run away. And then Josiah disappears while camping in his backyard. Mrs. Daniels, I'm not quite sure what you're implying, but if I'm right and you're trying to tell us that spiders are responsible for people going missing in our town, well then, I really don't know what to say to that, the mayor says, with what almost looks like a smirk on his face. Just then I glance over at Russell. His face is flushed and I can tell that I've embarrassed him. Seeing that no one else believes my assumption, and starting to feel a little foolish myself, I quickly sit back down, and the meeting ends shortly after that. Once it's over, Russell doesn't say a word to me. He just makes a beeline for his car. And when I get home, he's already parked in the driveway. I go inside and find him in the kitchen. I can tell he's still angry. What the hell was that all about? He asks, referring to what I said at the meeting. It was just a thought. I didn't expect you to get so upset. And I know that you and everyone else thought that it was crazy. But think about it. What if it is the spiders? What spiders, Lindsey? I haven't seen not a one. He's got a point, I think to myself. With all of these webs popping up all over the place, you'd think we would have come into contact with one by now. Look, Lindsey, you know I love you, but you've got to get over your fear of spiders. Don't you think if a poisonous spider had bitten any of those people, that they would have dropped dead right then and there? We would have already found their bodies. They wouldn't still be missing. Although I'm not completely convinced, I tell him that he's probably right and then move on. Then 2 weeks later, it's a little after 10 p.m. and I'm just getting ready to get into bed for the night when the doorbell rings. Who could that be at this time of night? Russell asks as he gets up and heads downstairs to answer it. I follow him, and when he gets to the door, he peeks out the window before opening it. It's Bridget, he says, looking back at me standing on the stairs. Then he proceeds to open it. She's standing there in her pajamas with 4 or 5 other people who I recognize as some of her family members who are visiting from out of town, and the look on her face tells me that she's clearly worried about something. I'm so sorry to bother you guys so late, but I'm looking for Duchess, she says, referring to her bulldog. Did she get loose again? Bridget nods her head. I usually don't tie her up outside after dark, but she just got so excited and riled up because I had company over that I had to put her out in the backyard by herself so she would calm down. And then when I went to check on her, I saw that she had gotten loose. But she never runs off too far. She usually just hangs around the yard until we let her back inside. And I know you said your cat just went missing, so I was wondering if she ever came back. No, we haven't found her yet, I reply sadly. Instantly, I see the disappointment in Bridget's eyes. Knowing the feeling all too well, because I'm still extremely upset over Arietti being missing, I offer to help her look. Then I volunteer Russell to come too. So Russell grabs 2 flashlights and our jackets while I go back upstairs to tell Jason that we're leaving and to stay there. Then we start searching the neighborhood. As we pass by Bridget's house, she suggests stopping to see if maybe Duchess made her way back home. So while she goes inside to check in with her daughter Marlo, Russell and I search the perimeter of the house. When we get to the backyard, I grip onto Russell's arm tightly and gasp when I see Duchess's doghouse covered in thick, wispy webbing. Russell starts calling for her, inching his way closer. "What are you doing?" I whisper. "I'm trying to see if she's in there." I let go of his arm. "Well, I'm not going over there." He creeps closer and closer, calling her name again and again. And just when he gets close enough to kneel down and take a look inside, Bridget walks up behind me with Marlo and her other family members, startling me, and I let out a scream. Russell jumps and turns around to see what's wrong. "Sorry," I say, smiling. "They scared the crap out of me." "Jesus Christ! Yeah, well, you just scared the shit out of me." "Did you find her?" he asks Bridget. "No, not yet. We're going to start searching the woods next." As much as I don't want to go into the dark, creepy woods at night, I agree to continue helping with the search. Before we head off into the woods, Russell decides to reach out and touch the webbing that's covering the doghouse. "Ew, that is so nasty. Why would you do that?" I question, when I see that pieces of it are now sticking to his hand like bubblegum. Without answering my question, he vigorously starts wiping his hand off on the side of his pants. When we begin approaching the woods, a bad feeling washes over me, like we shouldn't be going in there. I pause for a second, but then when Russell urges me to come on, I quickly catch back up with him. Once we're inside, everyone splits up into pairs, and at first, everything is ominously quiet. All I can hear are everyone's footsteps as the leaves crunch beneath us. Then, as we start to walk deeper and deeper into the woods, Russell reaches out and tries to grab a hold of my hand, but I instantly pull away and whisper, "I don't think so. You probably still have pieces of that crap stuck between your fingers." It's so dark that all of the trees look like silhouettes of giant monsters towering above us. As I shine my flashlight up at them, a gust of wind blows, and I see that there are webs everywhere, swaying in the breeze, making me feel even more creeped out and uncomfortable about being here. I zip my coat all the way up to my neck as I shiver. Just as I start calling for Duchess, shining my flashlight through the trees, something comes falling from up above and lands right on my head. Instantly, my eyes widen, my pulse quickens, and my heart starts thumping out of my chest. I let out a desperate, terrified scream that tears through the air like a shard of glass. Russell rushes over as the blood drains from my face. "What's the matter?" he questions. "A spider. I think a spider just fell in my hair." Immediately, he begins searching, and then a moment later, he starts to laugh as he holds up a leaf. "Is this the spider you're talking about?" I slap his hand away as a slight smile plays on my lips. "It's not funny. I really thought it was a spider." Then after another moment, I tell him, "Look, I really want to help find Duchess, but I think that maybe we should just go back home and wait until morning to keep looking." "All right, if that's what you want to do. But first, let's find Bridget and tell her we're leaving." I nod my head in agreement, and then we go looking for her. Just as we spot her and start heading in her direction, Russell and I somehow get separated, and the next thing I know, I stumble into some webs that are hanging from the branches and get all tangled up in them. I scream in terror as they stick to my skin and clothes, refusing to come off no matter how hard I wipe at them. I'm freaking out now, flailing all around like a maniac, screaming bloody murder, when out of the corner of my eye, I see everyone come running. Russell makes his way to the front of the crowd and starts pulling me out of the webbing. Damn, this stuff is really thick, and there's so much of it. Then all of a sudden, he just stops, slowly glances up, and a look of fear spreads across his face. "What?" I ask. "Don't move," he whispers as he continues to gently pull more of the webbing from my hair, not taking his eyes off of whatever it is that he sees. "Russell, what is it?" I ask again. "If it's a spider, you better tell me." He shakes his head. No, it isn't a spider. Not understanding what else it could possibly be, I look up, and that's when I see what it is he's discovered. Tons of massive-sized, cocoon-like nests covering nearly all of the branches. Inside of each one are dozens of golf-sized, white, silky balls, which I know can only be one thing: egg sacs. A chill runs right through me as I realize that there's one hanging directly above my head. Tears start streaming from my eyes as I beg Russell to hurry the hell up and get me out of there. When he finally manages to free me, I tell Bridget, "I'm so sorry. I really hope that you find Duchess, but I'm going home now." Then as Russell and I begin walking away, suddenly I hear a wet crunch sound. With a look of pure terror on his face, a man, who if I recall correctly is Bridget's brother, says, I didn't mean to. I didn't even see it there." I gasp in shock when I see dozens of tarantula-sized spiders emerging from the nest that he just stepped on. "What in the hell? Those are way too big to be baby spiders," Russell says in disbelief as they start crawling up the man's body, invading it. He desperately tries to brush them off, and he manages to knock off a few. They come scurrying through the dry, crunchy leaves so fast. Then, suddenly, I hear the sound of branches all around us snapping and cracking. Then the canopy of trees starts to shake, as if the forest knew that he had just done something unforgivable. I stand there frozen, and let out a blood-curdling shriek as I see something drop down from one of the trees. It latches onto both sides of his face, and then in one swift motion scoops him up and disappears back into the trees. That's when everyone looks up, and we see a ton of spiders, the size of a large dog, descending upon us. They are black and brown with white spots. Their entire bodies are covered with thick, furry hair. I can't tell which direction their eyes are looking as they move from side to side. Everyone starts screaming and freaking out. We're all running in different directions, trying to get the hell out of the woods as fast as possible. I grab a hold of Russell's hand tightly so that we don't get separated again as he starts leading the way out of the woods. I look back over my shoulder and watch as one woman gets tangled and trapped in the webs, and then seconds later she's attacked by one of the spiders. It wraps all 8 legs around her body and begins to squeeze. I swear I hear the sound of her bones crack, but then that sound is drowned out by Bridget calling for help from somewhere in the distance behind me. So Russell and I backtrack, trying to find her, and when we do, she's hysterical. I don't know where she went. She was just right here next to me, and then when I looked again, she was gone." "Who?" "Marlo. I told her to stay close. She was holding my hand, but she must have gotten away from me somehow." Then just as the 3 of us start shouting her name, I hear Bridget's mother screaming that someone else is gone now. I turn to Russell and frantically tell him, "We've got to get out of here." "Wait, no, please, you have to help me find Marlo," Bridget begs. Russell starts to apologize. "I'm sorry, but we have to go." But she's not listening to anything he's saying. Just as I reach out to grab her, planning on forcing her to come with us, right before my very eyes, only inches away, another large spider drops from one of the trees right in between the 2 of us, slowly rotating on its web, and before I can do anything, it grabs her with all of its legs, pulls her over, and digs its fangs into her neck, now muffling her screams of panic. Russell and I start to run as others around us are shouting that more people are going missing. As we run, I can still hear the scurrying sounds of the spiders as they speed through the woods after us, and even though I know they're not, it feels like their long hairy legs are crawling up and down my entire body. Finally, we make it to the edge of the woods. Russell's out of breath and has stopped running now and is just speed walking. "Hurry up, go faster," I scream at him as I see a spider, slightly bigger than all of the others, has followed us out of the woods and is coming right for us. As we go racing down the street toward our house, I spot Jason standing on the porch with his jaw hanging, staring in shock. "Get inside," Russell screams at him. When he finally sees us coming, he starts shouting a bunch of questions at us. "What's going on? Are you guys okay?" "Get your ass inside now," I yell at him this time. This time he does, and after what feels like forever, we finally make it to our front porch, rush inside, and then slam and lock the door behind us. We stand at the window, staring in overwhelming disbelief. It's like a scene right out of a horror movie. The spider that followed us out of the woods is now scurrying back and forth at the edge of our lawn, refusing to come any closer. Then finally, after a few minutes, it scurries off to one of the neighbors' houses. I stare up and down the street, watching as my neighbors come running out of the woods, screaming frantically, trying to get to their houses for shelter from these monstrosities. The spiders are chasing people and crawling all over my neighbors' houses. They are angrily trying to bust inside, smashing through windows and crawling down chimneys. I don't understand. Why is our house the only one on the whole block that none of them will come near? Jason asks. Even though I hadn't said anything, I was wondering the same thing. Every time a spider starts to even come near our house, it just suddenly stops right at the edge of our property and waits there, watching before suddenly scurrying off. And then a little while later, another will come back and do the exact same thing. But after thinking about it for a moment, I finally realize something. It must be the spider repellent, I tell Jason. I just went out the other day and bought 5 more cans. I sprayed it everywhere, inside and outside the house. I've been doing it every few weeks since those giant webs started showing up all over town. We stand there for hours, watching and waiting for them to leave. We try calling the police, but every time we do, there's no answer. And each hour that passes by, it seems like they're making their way closer and closer to the house, to the point where Russell says, "Where's that spider repellent? I think I better go out there and spray some around the porch, maybe even a little at them." "Are you nuts? You're not going out there. Plus, spraying it at them will only piss them off more, and I used the last of it anyway." "Well, if there's no more, I don't know how much longer the scent of the chemicals will keep them away. And if no one is coming to save us, it's only a matter of time before they make their way in here." I want to give a special shout out to Lady Nevermore for purchasing some of the merch to support the channel. Thanks so much, I really appreciate it. And stay tuned for a new video coming soon. Don't forget to subscribe for new stories weekly. See you next time on
Nina's Nightmares.
Really? You're supposed to click the like button, not me. Ugh.